Current year games industry challenge. Do not be racist or sexist against white men for 5 minutes. Challenge rating, literally impossible. As the subject matter of today demonstrates yet again. Believing it to be the year of our Lord 2014, she elects to send up a bit of a Californian bat signal on Twitter. Just wait until they notice that none of our starting characters in our alpha builds are white male. None out of 6. Giggle, 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 giggle. And again, if this was indeed 10 years ago, I'm sure that would have received a very positive response, but luckily, the culture war has evolved somewhat since then, and some people still haven't quite realized that Twitter isn't quite as biased a platform as it once was. And so, well, they did indeed notice, and shortly thereafter, these posts are protected, and even the game company that she is the CEO of, these posts are protected. You know, when I was growing up, there was a saying, if you can't stand the heat, don't play with fire. A lesson that a lot of people could really benefit from learning in this day and age, I feel. But I wanted to talk about something a little bit more specific here. Representation matters, inclusivity is not the same as racism. Enjoy hating on me for today, I'll go back to making games. So, this is obviously a very progressive person. How do I know this? Well, this alone is pretty indicative, but, well, University of Southern California, just in case you really needed it hammered home. I know we're basically at water is wet, sky is blue here, but, you know, for sake of order, I suppose. So, inclusivity is not the same as racism. That's an interesting little statement there, because in theory, you are absolutely correct. You can have a character creator with every shade of skin color underneath the sun. Black, blue, white, orange. You can play as a beastman, as a human male, as a female, as a straight-up furry, half-furry, two-thirds furry. I don't really care. Binary, non-binary. You can have a fantasy gender with 13 penises, for all I actually give a shit. But when it does become racism is when we can observe the intention of the person creating it. If, for example, they go out and say, oh, I don't know, something along the lines of, we are going to make sure there are absolutely 0 out of 6 black characters in our video game. I wonder if the mainstream media would consider this to be racist somewhat. Of course they would, because they are going to take the stance, the statement, and extrapolate one's intent from it. But we don't even need to do that because, well, we've got previous statements from the very self-same woman. I tried a company initially that was focused on diversity and inclusion. I built a company called Rainbow Unicorn Games with 2 founders, Athena Peterson and Nicola Finska. And we wanted to create a studio that was building games for diverse audiences by diverse developers. In other words, her very first foray into creating a gaming company was through an explicitly racial and gendered lens. That was the intent at the very beginning, to create games for a specific racial demographic, for a specific gender demographic, and for those games to be created by, again, specific races and specific genders. This is when it does become racism, when you are actively excluding certain groupings from your ideas of producing a game. This would not and was not acceptable, incidentally, at any point. That's the thing. If a game has a fixed protagonist, then that's one thing. What is it here? And I don't know how many games have lacked female characters or created gameplay penalties for being a female character, or created vertex shading on white skin to represent people of color. Well, here's the thing. If you've got a fixed character, then yes, that is probably the fixed character around which the story is intended to revolve. If that character needs to be like Prey, a Native American, then there you go. If that needs to be like in Postal, where the entire joke is of a trailer trash crazy person, then white trailer trash, there you go, etc. But honestly, most games simply just used to have character creators, and as for punishment for having female characters, you know, the only example I can think of at the top of my head is Baldur's Gate. And that wasn't even a punishment, that was simply if you were a male character, you got a bonus to strength and a minus to agility, whereas if you were a female character, you get a bonus to agility or dexterity, or whatever it's called, and a minus to strength, which makes sense, actually. In fact, I wish more games did that, because, sexually dimorphic species and everything, but details, eh? And of course, people were pointing out the flaws in her own logic. So, how will the majority of gamers be able to play the game if they don't see themselves represented? Because after all, representation is incredibly important, right? Without it, nobody would ever play video games. And we know for a fact that what people view as representation is an average build white man with short brown hair. There's a reason why this was the trope of every grizzled space marine, because yes, this is actually how the majority of people playing video games look, weirdly enough. Her response: we will have a fully featured character creator on release when you can fit your character to look like anything you like. In the meantime, an alpha for characters are static meshes for the sake of our deep focus on gameplay first. Gotta find the fun, then add the features. Okay, fair enough, but again, why did you lead with this? If your entire idea is this doesn't matter anyway, it is merely just static meshes, we're then going to add features, why did you begin with this? Yet further evidence that this is when representation becomes racism. Because this is her interpretation of this as a professional, right? But this is her statement as a person. And boy, I do like her presentation as well. I know how to make players come back for more, she says. Well, clearly not. Obviously not. If again, this is your baseline, despite admittedly knowing what the baseline should be, as in character creator, why are you doing this? What is the purpose? Well, one would imagine PR, I guess, as the gaming studio is an interesting one. A fusion of experience, I guess, plus AI. And then one starts looking a little bit closer at the picture. This is the mailing list for the studio, the Games Unleashed or whatever it was. And you can immediately begin to see some of the experience of problems with the AI here, right? Because, okay, using AI in games, I'm not opposed to it. In fact, I think it's a good idea, particularly for smaller studios that need to stretch resources, or simply just to add variety, color palettes, voice lines, stuff like that. Or even just an added help to writing quests, general outlines, etc. I think AI is probably the future of game development. But this is not how you use AI. Their hands are non-existent or broken in certain instances. In this case, they've seemed to wrap a cloth around her hand to hide how terrible the fingers are. The sword kind of grows into a crystalline bush down there. The presentation of the scene is completely off, as this character is clearly far in the background, as you can see, yet his hand and staff weapon thingy is extended beyond the character in front's flowing hair. And of course, the faces as well, where the eye there is kind of derped up, like the AI didn't quite finish generating that part of the character. Not to mention, I think the AI believes that either this is supposed to be fire blowing in the wind, or our female character here is molting something fierce. This is not how you use AI. At the very least, not as promotional artwork or as an example of what you can do. This is the kind of artwork that, if you just glance at it real quick and nothing more, looks kind of okay. But the moment you spend more than 3 seconds looking at it, you begin seeing all the flaws. Like, I don't know, kind of like her entire position on things, as I can near guarantee you, she has no actual explanation of what the difference is between inclusion and racism, particularly from a person who goes out and actually explicitly states their racist intentions first and foremost. This is simply just an after effect of being indoctrinated into this way of thinking, without ever having actually gone back over it as to, why do I actually think these things are different? Why isn't representation racism? And when do the two actually blend together? And again, intent. And here, The issue is, of course, also that it's also always very difficult to actually prove intent, or at the very least to illustrate intent beyond reasonable doubt, right? But fortunately, on the internet, everything remains forever, and so we can see it. And I do even believe that this was a podcast produced by themselves. Yes, there you go. There's the creators there, and I'm fairly sure if we go up here, yep, there we go. The members of the game studio. So, yes, I believe these are members of the game studio. I mean, it's on the webpage, so presumably. When you actually can demonstrate that people went out of their way with the intention of creating games specifically for certain groups of people, specifically with certain groups of people, then yes, that is no longer representation. That is quite obviously and self-evidently exclusion. And at that point, it absolutely does become racism. And fortunately, we are not in the year 2014 anymore, and so obvious bigotry is actually called out. Happy, happy days. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.